Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday, April 27, 2009 informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. We'll now call this meeting to order. First up, we have a City Council staff report. We have updates from Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk.
Thank you and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a couple of updates. I know you've been watching for the Districting Commission and their report to the Council this next Monday. They will deliver to you the report along with the map option L, and that is their recommended version. I know for some of you you've had concerns, and so I just give you the heads up. As you of course know, the Charter allows you to either adopt that map as it is, or you can perhaps challenge that, sending it back to the Commission within 21 days to have them rework that. In addition, just, of course, it's budget time for the city as we prepare for the 2010 budget, and for our office in particular, it's the 2010 election. I think I have heard from most of you about using, not using super precincts in the 2010 election. As you know, the school district will be using super precincts on May 12th, and so if there are any of you who would prefer that option, please let me know now. Otherwise, we will just budget for the full amount of polling places like we have done in years previous. And then finally, there's a Municipal League dinner that has been rescheduled for tomorrow night. I know Vernon had talked about it a few weeks ago. If any of you are going, we may want to carpool down, so perhaps we can talk about that after the informational meeting. Thank you very much.
Deborah, is that in Vermillion? Is that where they open? They have a new city hall?
Yes.
And do they have a new mayor as well? Or is that someplace else? Oh, okay, all right. Maybe I'll speak to you about going there. Are you driving down there, Vernon? Okay, very good. Why don't we get together here after this informational and get some details here. Next up, is there anybody from the mayor's office? Anything? Evidently not. Number 4 is Audit Committee.
No report.
Fiscal Committee.
No report, other than we'll be meeting next Monday after the informational.
Very good. Land Use Committee.
Land Use Committee has a meeting following this meeting, and we've got a couple items on the agenda. We're going to talk about sediments that fall into the Sioux River, I guess you might call it, as well as the Shape Sioux Falls policies that may be adopted. I think there's a lot of input on that hopefully other councilmen will be able to make it. So thanks.
Very good. Questions of Greg on that? Very good. Public Services Committee.
No update at this time.
Very good. Well, number 8 is City Council open discussion. Anything for the greater good? Councilor Brown.
I have one thing I'm going to pass around. I was at the Homeless Advisory Board meeting this morning, and we have Tim and Nancy Nicolai from Sioux Falls, who own the Arena Motel, are featured in the April 13th edition of People magazine for what people calls People Heroes in Hard Times. As you know, they help house a lot of homeless people out there. This is an example of how the community steps up when it comes to families and children in homeless situations. So I will share this. I have scanned copies for all of you, and I will send that around. But Tim and Nancy were at our meeting today, and as a result of this, they are receiving checks from around the country to help their cause. And they are also going to be part of a national talk show next month, and they've been advised to set up a nonprofit because they anticipate that the Nicolais will receive a significant amount of cash coming in to help them in the services they do. So I just provide this as an example of how 2 people in our community are doing a lot for homeless families in Sioux Falls.
Very good. Thank you for that, Vernon. Councilor Anderson.
I got a couple things today. Number 1, I want to thank the Public Works Department, Mark Cotter, and the Lighting Department for assisting in an issue over on East 8th Street over by the railroad area and Monks and the east side of the downtown Sioux Falls by installing some new lights and making it a safer area. I drove through there early this morning, and the lighting seems to be working quite well. So I just wanted to give that type of recognition to the Parks Department, or excuse me, to Public Works for doing a great job. Second, also, I'd like to re-invite or let the council know that tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. There will be a chamber ribbon cutting of one of our existing parks that has been finally completed. That's Harmadon Park. The ribbon cutting will be at 6 o'clock, and we're giving out hot dogs, chips, and Cokes as long as they last. Anybody that wants to come out, I think it's an amazing park. It will show you what our parks do for adults and youth here in Sioux Falls, and it will also allow the organizations to go out and bid for regional and national tournaments, bringing more people here to the city.
Very good. Councilor Knudsen.
Let's see, I have 3 quick items. One, I'd just like to once again publicly thank Johnstone Supply and Novak for their incredible contributions with the Whittier neighborhood cleanup. It went flawlessly. I mean, again, by the 3rd time, anytime you do a project after the first time, you get smarter. And I was just there for a little while Saturday afternoon, but really the project was going very, very well. And again, Novak contributes all of their dump trucks all day long for that project. And I have not heard the total number of tonnage that was collected, but let's just say that there was a brisk business much of the day. And again, that's a fabulous location for us to do that volunteer cleanup there at Johnstone Supply at 6th and Weber. I really appreciate that business allowing us to do that again. And again, we always have very, very helpful cooperation from city departments too. So I always we couldn't do it without them. And then it was very good of the banquet once again to feed the workers, the volunteers after the event was over. So that's my first announcement for the day. And then I learned a little bit more yesterday from regarding the city-owned historic Orpheum Theater that even for people that went to South Dakota State University, like my colleague, Councilor Brown, he's still invited to this anyway, is that the USD Playhouse for the 3rd year is going to bring a play up, and this summer it's going to be Man of La Mancha, and it's June 19th through 21st, and so that's Father's Day weekend. Tickets will be $17, and the box office will not open until June 1st, but I wanted you to think about putting that on your June calendar. I'm sure your June calendar is already full. And then last but not least is I've been preparing today to do an inside town hall show on the horse barn. And I have visited the horse barn down in Falls Park many times throughout the years, but I had not been there for a little while. And so that's why I'm a couple minutes late, and I apologize for being a couple minutes late today. But anyway, just wanted to tell everyone who's not been to Falls Park recently that, wow, it's green and beautiful down there. Lots of great art and photography at the horse barn. And downstairs in the portfolio gallery, there's an artist that I was just visiting with from Sioux Falls. He's been painting about 5 years, and his name is Micah Luke. And his art is, he said it's kind of based on street art, graffiti art, and it's very striking, very stunning, and he has an open house this Friday night from 5 to 8 p.m. And so Deb Klebenhoff, the director of the Sioux Empire Arts Council, and I are going to do an inside town hall show this Friday to teach or remind everyone more about the great horse barn and all of the summer activities there.
Very good. Questions of Councilor Knudsen? Very good. Councilor Jameson, did you?
I had a question, but a question on the redistricting maps. Has anybody had any input on that from anybody?
Well, I think we all received, or I assume we all received a letter and a map a couple weeks ago, a proposed map, from former legislator and former city councilor Mary Glensky, who I know has been very active. So I've heard from her, and then I had just one other phone call, and so that's my vote. I've had two calls.
Councilor Brown.
I, too, have had neighbors in the Cathedral District reach me and contact me about the maps. And then also when I was here for the public input that day.
And I assume that all the city councilors saw the, I think, very helpful pro and con columns in yesterday's paper, known as the Argus Leader. I think that those were well written in a very user-friendly style, and they were. I think they would be helpful to any citizen who's wondering more about the redistricting process.
I also got a email from Vance that was very well reasoned and thought out, detailing the process, how they got there, and what their thought processes were. And I tend to agree with him, but that is my district. I've been in there working a lot here lately, and had folks stop by, and I've gotten a lot of input both sides of it recently. And I still. It's one of those things where I see both sides of the question, so it's going to be a tough one for me, listening to that and trying to figure out where we're really going to go.
Once we, if we do change, when we change the maps, however option we choose, we'll have to redo it again, is that right? In 10?
Yes, that's right. We'll do it again in 10. This is just for one election. It'll be a city election. Is that correct? Yes.
Sorry, who's affected by that election?
If I could,
Please.
No one.
there's 4 seats that are up, and that would be Bennigas, which is the southeast district, Kermit's, the central district, and, am I forgetting? There's 2 at-larges, Dee's seat and then Pat's. So the districts that are the most affected for this election are the southeast and the central, and those actually have had changes too, so if you want to take a look at the maps, I can certainly get you additional copies. I know Map M was given to you, I believe, by Mary Glensky, and so there are concerns, though. We've had a number of calls. We have passed all of that information on to the commission, and they reviewed that at their last meeting last week.
Councilor Knudsen.
Regarding the phone call, besides the letter that I had, the phone call that I received from a citizen that I know a little bit and hadn't talked to her for years and years, but knew her previous issue a long time ago, is, I think, in that phone conversation, she was talking about, kind of like Minnesota Avenue and, and that precinct 3-4, trying to keep it in that particular area, the northeast area. But I think it's, and I listened very, very carefully, but I think it is important for all of us to remember that, it's, a street, a Minnesota Avenue, for instance, is not a natural boundary. It's not a natural boundary. And then I think even as important, I think it was helpful to me anyway to remember that as far as like even the legislative district up there, which is District 15, that there are, I think, at least 3 precincts that are on the east side of Minnesota Avenue. And so I'm just saying that in my mind, sometimes people like me, they're a little compulsive. We kind of like these straight lines and clear lines or whatever, but of course in a redistricting, that's impossible. And as far as one precinct being recommended to be moved over, again, in the legislative session right now, or legislative process right now, there are 3 precincts in that district. So that's helpful to me.
Well, when I was growing up in the North End, to be a North Ender, you had to be on this side of the river, and then if you were on the other side over there, you were an East Sider. And if you were a North Ender that forayed into the East Side, you might have to be real fleet of feet upon occasion there to come back across that river. So I think Kenny would remember that. Is there anything else here? I had a question about the redistricting, and I asked you about that 3-2 precinct. Is the precinct that I live in, and then in the year 2000, the census had a pretty straight line. It came over, and then it went up to my precinct, took 2 blocks out, and then kept going straight. It looked like kind of a single tooth going up in there, and I, at the time, always considered it that was politically motivated, and I still think it is today. And I saw that you had something that said that what was up with that precinct on here?
Well, actually, as we were looking to put the proposed changes from the commission into an ordinance to bring before you next week, as it turns out, there was a precinct that I think back in 2004 that was changed. We had 2 entries for it in the ordinance. There was, I think it was 3-1 and 3-2 were both the same precinct, and so we hadn't used 3-2. It was supposed to have been retired in 2004. And it never was, so we were just simply cleaning that up as well. But back to legislative districts, actually are always a little bit different than city districts, actually tremendously different from city districts. I do know the commission has worked hard on all of the map. I also know that there is a strong advocates on the other side, and Precinct 3-4 is the only one that has ever had any real objection from those citizens, so there you go.
3-2, we're starting to feel like orphans over there. Seems like we're getting moved around and all that sort of thing, but I guess that's the way it is. Kenny?
Again, Pat was waiting. Okay. I just hope that as a council, we'll consider every option that's out there. I think that the redistricting committee did a wonderful job, and I know they worked very hard, but this whole ideal of redistricting was to make the least amount of moves to impact the least amount of people for this one election, and then we'll move on after the census is done. So I like both plans, but I would say I like M a lot better because it impacts a lot less people.
Councilor Costello.
Well, if I remember right, there's no election in the Northwest or Northeast in a 10 elections, so really, they aren't impacted.
Well, they would be because you have two at-larges. They do get to vote in those elections. So, but that's what they, but they don't want it changed right at this time. Once again, it was supposed to just be moving a few districts and not, being a large movement of people moving around, because we're going to redo it again in 10. So that's the only reason I said that, is it was supposed to be the least impact.
Yeah, they'll vote on the at-large regardless of what districts they're in, but there's no re-election for the Northeast or the Northwest district themselves. So in that sense, they're not affected.
But they're the ones that are moving. So if they feel they're impacted, they're impacted.
I think part of their objection, if I could, just on their behalf, was that they are changing their council. They've elected one person, and then they won't be able to elect the next one for quite some time. So that is the issue, I think, with some of them as well.
Councilor Knudsen.
Well, and I guess I'd just like to say that that of course we should consider all the plans and so forth. And I'm really appreciative of the number of hours for months that the 5 volunteers have spent on this issue. But I mean, I think it's also important for us to remember. I mean, there's a point where whether you move this or this. Someone has to move to get it. To get. I mean, it's like unavoidable that someone doesn't get moved. But the fact that I've had one letter and one phone call, and I'm accessible, just like I've said before, 24 hours a day, it seems to me that there's not been a great deal of controversy on this issue.
Very good. Thank you, Dee. I got a couple of things here. I see Sculpture Walk 2009 this Saturday. They're going to have their kickoff and artist reception down the Holiday Inn. And also the Minnehaha County Courthouse ceremony is going to be held on the front steps of the courthouse at 3 p.m. on Friday, May 1st, 2009. And so we'll welcome that legal addition into City of Sioux Falls here. I know it's been quite a deal, and I think that this county and city bears the brunt of a lot of legal expenses that aren't experienced in other parts of the state. And so to that end, I think we have a pretty nice answer down there with that courthouse. Also, another thing here, this Saturday, the reason that I was not over at the East Side cleanup, and incidentally, I did get a lot of calls. I think I got 5 calls with questions about that, and I was quick to try to answer them or refer them to April Shabi, who could answer them. But I had to do a Habitat for Humanity project, and I suppose most of you remember here a little while back we had kind of what was to me kind of a painful vote on the uses of some of the property that Habitat had, and I'd like you to know that today there's 2 very nice single family dwellings going up there. The neighborhood's happy, and I had about 20 Augie football students and probably about 20 people from my church trying to go back and forth between these 2 structures, and we had quite a Saturday out there. But I think most, if you go out there now, I think that in retrospect we did make the right decision. The neighbors are happy, people that are moving in the house are happy, and the Habitat people actually are happy too. So to that end, I wanted everybody to know that. Is there anything else here for the greater good on the open discussion? Okay, seeing nothing. Also, I want to jump ahead a little bit. The executive session for a personnel matter that we planned on, Gerald, is not going to be here. Councilor Costello feels very strongly that we should all be here and attending that, so we're not going to do the executive session after that. Which brings us to number 9, the presentations. First, we're going to have our monthly financial update by Eugene Rowenhorst, the Director of Finance. Gene? How are you today, Gene?
I think I'm getting old. Things hurt when I move anymore.
It's inevitable.
Good afternoon, Gene Roanhorse, Director of Finance. On the financial statements, there's a few things that we'll touch on that are of note, but we're still not really in a position where we can make a lot of presumptive statements. Probably the first thing is on page 1 in the general fund on the bank franchise tax line. During the month of March, we got $2,289,000, which is $1 million more than we had in the budget, and is the third, last time only that you'll see this. So it's good news for us. That, we're not going to complain about that. In conjunction with that, we probably should talk about the sales tax number. That covers both the general fund and on page 2 of the capital fund. We got the numbers in about 10 o'clock this morning for the month of March. So this will actually be April's results, and the increase in the sales tax year over year went from 2.0% in March to 1.3% in April. So it's dropped, not dramatically, but nonetheless the trends are not in the right direction, or really not a trend established as yet, I guess would be the best thing to say. We're just going to have to keep this in mind. We've still got our holdbacks in that we've talked to you about the capital program and the general fund. So they're still in place. Unfortunately, we probably are going to have to hold on to them at least another month. We'll see how that turns out before we let them go. Other than that, little change that we made on starting on page 4. This is all of the other funds, including, but it doesn't include the enterprise funds, which are on page 7. But if you'll take a note, just something to make it a little bit easier, we put in just kind of small print. Right below, let's say, where it says entertainment tax fund, right below it, we put a little description in there of the line in there that will be in there from now on. So when you look at these numbers, you'll be able to know kind of what that fund is for. There's quite a few funds here: the entertainment fund, the railroad fund, the community development fund, the transit system, and just to help the council with being familiar with those, or at least have a little bit of an explanation from them. On page 7, the enterprise funds, they all seem to be doing okay. Public Works is in the process right now of going through all of the fees assessments that the council wants done before we actually have the budget done. So I'm not sure what their deliverable is on it, but I do know they've started on it because finance is sitting in on it. But what the deliverable date is, I don't know. And then go back to next to page 12. Before that is all the capital project funds. But on page 12, there's a holdback summary there. So we still have $5.3 million that we're holding back for the capital fund. And this is the list of items essentially that are being held back at this time. We're not going forward until we can let loose of those funds if the sales tax comes up. If the sales tax doesn't come up, we'll have to start prioritizing and pulling items out of here, and will not be done this year. And then one other thing I'd like to draw to your attention. We're going to be going into a little discussion here about a bond issue, but on page 16, that is all of the outstanding debt that we have at this point in time. And I guess the thing we should draw a note, there's a lot of discussion. If you go way down to the lower right-hand corner, it says there's $321 million in outstanding and authorized debt. That's a true number, but that $329,000 includes the $89,000 up above. And that 89,000 is the only piece that is really subject to the sales tax. The rest of it is all enterprise funds, primarily water and water reclamation. So, and down in that number, it's 178 million, I guess, and that number includes things like Lewis and Clark. So I think when we're talking about bonds, we probably should be aware of that. One other good piece of information, I guess I missed it, and I'm getting out of order here. Just a little tidbit. We bought contracts a week and a half ago now for fuel. And the fuel prices that we got on the contracts is 63% of the city's fuel budget for the months of June, July, and August. The total savings against the budget is $430,000. So that was kind of a tidy little sum to help us tighten things up. We'll see where the rest of the excuse me. We'll see where the rest of it goes. Now I've got a high handout. If I can take just a minute and disperse this.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to get over a bug, but it's not the swine flu, I can tell you that. What I just dispersed to you, or actually this morning, before 10 o'clock this morning, we filed a ordinance, a bonding ordinance with the clerk's office for the quality of life bonds, and you will get an electronic copy of this also. Probably tomorrow morning. This just gives you a summary of the quality of life bonds and what's being proposed. This will have the first reading next Monday and the second reading on the 18th. And we wanted to give you some not really detailed information, but a real good summary of it. This all comes right out of the CIP book for 2009. And the four projects, the West Side Library, the River Greenway improvements, the youth sports, which is the junior football complex, and the zoo master plan improvements. So just to give you some information to have between now and next Monday, when the actual filing will come in, or the ordinance actually comes up for reading, and we'll be discussing it at that point. I could answer some easy questions at this point, I guess, but if there are any.
Councilor Staggers.
Yes. Gene, are we going to have this go through a council committee?
Well, no, it won't go to a committee. I mean,
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, maybe we should have it go to a committee? The fiscal committee?
Go ahead, Pat.
You know, we certainly could. I guess the questions that I would add, none of these projects are new to us. We've seen them before, and they've been in the CIP. It really comes down to, I think, your own personal decision on whether you think this is a good time to be borrowing $18.5 million or not. I mean, we can send it to a committee. I'm sure the fiscal committee would be willing to take it. But what do you want the fiscal committee to do?
Do their duty.
Which is?
To take a look at this and ask questions, especially like you mentioned here. We are in an economic downturn. We ought to maybe have the committee members ask questions about that.
Vernon, do you have any comments on that? Or
Frankly, we probably achieve more for the public's information by doing it as a group, because all of us are interested in this, and if we do it here at this forum, everyone gets the opportunity to see what we're doing, whereas if it's in a committee format, although those are open, they're not broadcasts, so there's less opportunity for people to participate and understand the discussion.
Councilor Knudsen.
Well, I am very comfortable with the plan as it was presented to have the first reading next Monday and to vote on May 18th. Again, I do think that, it's not like it's written that every single topic we touch has to go through a committee, but when it's like new information, I think it is helpful to go through a committee. But again, these topics have been discussed for almost the entire, 3 of them anyway. I mean, almost the whole time I've been on city council, and I've been here almost 7 years. So these are not new topics, and I have no interest in delaying the process if that's part of the, incentive behind going through committee, and it may not be. And so those are my thoughts.
Mr. Anderson.
I guess I was taking a look at this, and I agree also, Dee, that I don't think this needs to go into a committee at this time. But being that it's going to be a first reading next week, we still have that opportunity to divert this into a committee if we feel so at that time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I wish, or I hope everyone feels comfortable calling me in my office. You send me an email. If there's any questions on this, if you have it all, and if you want to come in and visit about it, if you want to send an email, we'll respond to you. We'll be glad to help anybody understand if they have questions, please raise them, and we'll be glad to get a response to you.
Councilor Costello.
Kermit, if there was a concern that maybe we weren't living with our ratios on our covenants, as far as what our existing debt, I think that would be something to look into. But I don't think we're anywhere close to those. So if there's any material fact that you wanted the committee to look into to try to determine or ascertain, I think that would be legitimate. But other than that, I think it's pretty clean cut here.
Well, if I could respond, we already have some changes being presented from the 2009-2013 CIP plan. For example, the West Side Library, the price is up $0.2 million. The River Greenway improvements up $2.5 million. I guess I'd be kind of interested in, the committee taking a closer look at why we have, for example, $2.5 million increase in Greenway from our original plan that we've passed. That's just one example. But also, I think another really important reason to do this is because, we are talking about $18.5 million. And in the past, it's been kind of like, does this go to a committee or doesn't it go to a committee? We have not really had any formal process. Some things go to a committee, some things don't. Something like this, I think, is really just simply very important to go to the committee. Now, maybe the committee will say, hey, everything's okay, and pass it on to us, which is appropriate. Or maybe they will find something.
Councilor Knudsen.
Well, I do think it's very important that every question we have be answered fully. And again, I would say that even today when we don't have a 7 o'clock meeting, that we have the Director of Finance here to even start with questions besides the fact that he's accessible all the time to us. And also I think it's a good reminder to the listening public that these major projects that we have talked about, that there's a point when elected officials need to just have the courage to vote either no or yes and move the city either, stay where we are or move forward. And again, these topics have been discussed. We've had tours, and goodness sakes, they are hardly new. But I think also it's important. I was visiting with actually a very good friend of mine a few weeks ago, and I was talking about bonding on the city, and she was asking me some questions. And I reminded her that sometimes we bond because then we spread the cost of these important projects over a longer period of time for those people who will be using the projects, the facilities during that time. And she's a very bright, capable lady. She's a former elected official, actually. and maybe running for office again. And she said to me, you know, Dee, I've never thought about it that way. She said that was very helpful to me. And so that's why I'm mentioning that as a reminder. And I think it's also important to remember that we do have a city council policy that's very clear as far as bonding is concerned, that we need to have twice as much money, on hand. And we are well within those means, which is just kind of a step further from what Councilor Costello said.
Councilor Brown.
This is related, but off track a little bit. Gene, if you could go back to the debt numbers. I was looking at other numbers when you were going through that, but could you explain that again for me, the $321 million in the debt, and then break it down into what I'll call the buckets, so there's a clear understanding not only up here, but for the general public to understand?
The difference that we're pointing out is those that are raised through service fees, like water reclamation are the primary ones. Lewis and Clark is a big one in there. And that's from that where it says business type on the left-hand side, from there on down. And that totals to $178 million. Those are all enterprise funds money.
So you're saying that the $178.8 million will be repaid through the fees that people pay on the water, sewer, those kind of projects,
Right.
Not
Right.
the tax, not the second penny sales
Well,
tax.
it's not tax money as such.
So the actual amount of debt that's repaid with the second penny sales tax is the column up above, you said, with $89 million?
89 million, and that is, those are primarily projects that are indeed covered by the sales tax, and up in there sits the, the flood control bonds are up in there. I guess that's the only one that's really not. When you look at it, you can take out another $38 million. It's flood control bonds. That does get paid by taxes, but it's not the kind of typical situation that you'd have.
Plus, there's the entertainment tax in there, too, which is not second penny, but
Right.
and that's about $16.9 million, it looks like, if I'm reading that correctly.
I'm not sure where you're at.
Up right-hand side, about the middle of the upper half, entertainment tax fund, entertainment bonds.
Oh, yes. That is the primarily the convention center and the arena. I guess that was the arena, pavilions, and the convention center and the pavilion primarily in there.
Okay. Thanks, Gene.
Councilor Costello.
Gene, on that same page, then, the 89 million and the 178, that doesn't add up to the 321. What's the other number that goes in there?
It's 178. Oh, the 65, doesn't it? The amount outstanding, I don't know. You got me standing flat-footed on this one right now. We'll clarify.
Okay. And then regarding our conversation on the fiscal committee, Kermit, I think I've said it many times in here in the informationals or wherever that I'm not a fan of the committee structure that we have, because I think, quite frankly, we send issues that really ought to be dealt with by the entire council to a committee. And I agree with you 100% that this is a very important issue for us, and I think the entire council needs to do the research on this. And the case in point, not only this, but today's Public Service Committee meeting, I mean, with the Shape Sioux Falls review of that, I think that's another issue we really should be dealing with the entire council. So don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't think I'm treating it lightly. I just think it's an issue that we as a council have to address, and rather than just putting it to three members and asking them to make some kind of decision on it.
If I could respond to that, I guess, I don't disagree with what you're saying, so why don't we just have a formal committee of the whole meet to deal with this?
Councilor Anderson.
I guess, Kermit, what I'm going to say on this is too important to put into a committee, and then it takes it away from the general public knowing what we're discussing. I think this needs to be discussed as a full council, and right here during informational and council meetings next week. And then at that point in time, we can always defer it from the second reading and move forward from there, because I think there's going to be a good public response to this now that it's out there.
Well, once again, we could have our informational next week. We could have a committee of the whole then. We could ask questions, and we could have a formal presentation. Is that what? I mean, that would be the option instead of just, having 3 members of the fiscal committee take a look at it. So we could get a formal presentation next Monday. Because I don't think we were going to have a formal presentation.
Mr. Brown?
Gene, I assume that first reading would be a formal presentation of the bonds.
We're going to have all the people here that have a part in it, planning and parks primarily, but the zoo will be here.
And then second reading, when is that scheduled for?
Well, we have it on the calendar for the 18th.
Councilor Knudsen?
I'm actually not opposed to a committee of the whole or whatever, and I consider next Monday when it's the first reading, as usual, we are allowed as many hours as we want to ask questions. And again, we have this information, but we have way more than that because these topics have been discussed, again, a couple of them for almost 7 years. I mean, after 7 years, it's probably time to decide to either, move on or forget it and bring up some new topics. So I do think next Monday's informational is a great time to have a committee of the whole, if we want to call it that way, in the public here.
Mr. Staggers?
Yeah, I think it'd be okay to have a committee of the whole next Monday at 4 o'clock. But the suggestion just to talk about this at the first reading, I know in the past, sometimes we've asked questions during the first reading, and then some people object, saying, well, this is just the first reading. You're not really supposed to ask these questions. And so just to keep it nice and clean, I think it would still be best to have, to have the committee of the whole at our informational next week.
Mr. Costello?
As a point of reference, I think for next Monday's informational meeting, we have no presentation scheduled, so it might be a good time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If
Gene.
I may, the $38 million, I'll tell you where it's at. If you look just about 4 lines down, there's $38 million there. That is the flood control bonds. You'll notice it does not get carried across because nothing's been done with it.
Because we haven't done it yet, is that
Right.
correct?
I'm sorry, Gene, where is that at?
It's 1, 2, 3, the 4th line down. $38 million. And you'll see we don't carry it across.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Councilor Knudsen?
Well, I guess I'd just like to say, I've never ever felt rushed on any topic that we've considered. I always think the buck stops with us if we want to ask as many questions during the first reading. I mean, no one has ever told me to be quiet. So I think it's important to, I'm sure that the administration will be very well prepared for this important issue. And I would just assume that Director Rowenhorst would take the message back to his team, that we would have all the directors here, which they would be here anyway, and that we will have ample questions for them, and we can have a great discussion next Monday, and then a vote, yes or no, on May 18th, I hope.
Very good. Gene, there's a couple of things here. Regarding the sales tax increase for this month, the 1.3 does represent an increase over 08. Is that correct? So it wasn't the projection, but 1.3 is an increase over last year at this time.
That's an increase over last year, but we don't have the sales tax, the .08, in order to keep it comparable. We're not counting that in there this time around. Next year it'll match up.
So it's a little bit more, is
For
what you're
purposes
saying.
of calculating the increase, we back that out.
Okay, very good. So there's a little more not accounted for at this time than that one.
Yeah, and that money is going into the our arterial-driven streets project.
Very good. But what I'm getting at is we do have a plus on the sales tax. It's not in a negative.
No.
Because too many people think that when they see the 1.3, but it's still a plus. It's not the plus we were hoping for. The other thing is on that
We were hoping for a plus of 6.5%, and it's coming in at 1.3%.
I understand. The other thing, Gene, that I would encourage us to refer to is on this youth sports complex. It always says junior football, and I was under the impression that the hockey people were always in on this here too. That this facility was going to be there was going to be space for the hockey facility as well. And I would appreciate, unless somebody's got a serious objection, is when we call it the youth sports junior football / hockey. Would probably be more appropriate. Recently, Councilor Brown and I had a spate of letters, and maybe some of you other folks had it from the hockey folks. And so, I don't want to forget them.
Yep.
Mr.
Well,
Staggers.
I guess I might disagree with you there a little bit. My understanding is that this is truly to be a junior football complex. And then we have Sanford having other land out there that they might donate for the hockey association. So I don't think it would be exactly correct to include the hockey in this, because this is purely a football complex.
Well, when I saw the artist's rendition of this here, there was space for the hockey complex if they wanted to, if we got a building up later on. The parking, the infrastructure out there and all would be shared.
See, so that's another reason why we should be talking more about this in a committee or committee of the whole.
Council Chair Litz, I think Councilor Staggers is probably correct. I think what we saw was the grand vision of what that area can develop into, and part of it was the junior football, and then the other part was the hockey.
Right.
I think this $4.2 million is junior football.
Well, it's to get infrastructure out there, because we've got a road, we've got a 4-lane road, we've got to get water, we've got to get sewer, we've got to get power, we've got to get parking out there, which would lend itself to both facilities. So in my mind, both of them are going to share those facilities eventually. Councilor Knutson.
Well, I am as supportive as you are of someday in the near future having an adequate hockey facilities in our city, but I actually do agree with Councilor Staggers on this as far as I think, unless we're told otherwise next week or today, that we should probably not get in the renaming business here on this issue yet, because I believe there's some private money that needs to be raised by the hockey folks.
Yes, that's correct.
But I just wanted to say that I've heard from the hockey people too, and I am as supportive as I've always been about someday in the hopefully near future having adequate hockey facilities for our great city.
Well, I know probably the crucial difference here is that the South Dakota junior football people have talked about funding some things, and I don't think we've gotten a firm number out of hockey, but I think it was always the intention of this complex to have hockey out there at some point, some degree. My point is that you have a road to get there, you have water, you have sewer, you have power. Those are going to be for whatever winds up out there. So that's my argument on the hockey. Is do we have a hockey facility proposed at this time? No, but it's definitely in the future. Anybody else? Councilor Jamison, look like you have a question.
I'm just smiling, Bob. Actually, maybe the actual words of youth hockey or junior football should be removed is more probably precise,
Maybe.
because there'll be more activities hopefully out there in the future. But
Maybe.
I think we're splitting hairs.
Sounds like a better idea than mine. Very good. Well, Gene, is there anything else? Any other questions of Gene? Very good. Gene, thank you for your presentation today. Thanks for the job you do down there. Sometimes it's got to be kind of thankless. So, next up, we have the Local Labor Market and Sales Tax by Mark Weber, citizen. Mark?
City Council leadership for giving me an opportunity to make a presentation on this today.
Instead of 72, it seems colder than that.
Want to hum us a few bars there, Mark?
Well, I'm going to get started on this anyway.
If you could, Mark, can you just go to the podium until she fixes fixes that microphone. That way we can actually, people who are watching can hear you as well. Thank you very much.
In the middle of, I appreciate the City Council leadership for allowing me to make this presentation today. A few weeks ago, Sioux Falls got some favorable press in the Los Angeles Times, and the headline, I think, is a little bit misleading. I'll try to go through it. What recession? Places like Sioux Falls prove resilient. By a couple of definitions, one of which is I'm a subscriber of this dismal scientist of Moody's economy.com, and also Ralph Brown, who's a retired professor from the University of South Dakota. His definition of a recession in a rural state like this is if non-farm employment decreases. That has taken place since August of last year. Moody's economy.com basically, since data from last August of 2008, and if this doesn't focus, it's going to really detract this presentation because there are a lot of these graphs. The green states are states that were growing. The yellow colored are states that were at risk, and the red states were not Republican states. They're the states that economy.com considered in recession. And the two variables that they take a look at is changes in employment and industrial production or manufacturing. Okay, that's August is what, 7-8 months ago. And instead of going through this month by month, which is really pointless, this is January's data from 2009, and you can see there are only 8 states that are still at risk. Everything else is red. This is the latest data, which was published in the middle of April. There are only 3 states left: North Dakota, Wyoming, and Alaska. Everything else, as far as economy.com, is considered in recession. Well, that's the big picture as far as statewide. You can also look at this on the basis of standard metropolitan statistical areas. There are 383 of them in the United States. And you'll notice there is only one that is still growing. That's down on the border of Texas. What has happened in South Dakota since November is that Rapid City, since there are only 2 standard metropolitan statistical areas in South Dakota, Rapid City has gone from growth to at risk to recession as of January. And I don't know what has happened with Sioux Falls, but since Sioux Falls is probably 25% of the state's economy and Rapid City is less than that, if economy.com is just based on the base of industrial production and employment moves South Dakota into recession, I would suspect that Sioux Falls has also joined the red group. I'm switching gears a little bit to the Sioux Falls Metropolitan Statistical Area labor market. This data comes from Aberdeen, from the State Department of Labor. basically I've taken their tables and I put it on graphical form. In addition to just Sioux Falls as a whole, they break down our local labor market into 13 sectors. The metropolitan statistical area for Sioux Falls is defined as Minnehaha, Lincoln, and Turner counties. In March 2009, this total was 133,200 non-farm jobs. Since the September 2008 peak, which was 138,800 non-farm employment at that time, our local labor market has lost 5,600 jobs. This is almost more than twice the seasonal decline that you would expect from a summer peak to which is usually a January or February trough of the following year. Of these 13 sectors, in 1998, only 3 of them actually grew. Trade, transportation, and utilities, which is 21% of the total market, labor market. Education and health services, which is 19%, and retail trade, which is 12%. Now, what you see in this graph consistently all the way through this is calendar year 2007 level of employment month by month is in yellow. Red is 2008, and the blue is 2009. And you can see for the first time, and I don't know when, that the March and the February 2009 employment for this entire 3-county area is less than the previous year. Because what you would like to see, as with retail sales, you would like to see these graphs uniformly increase from one year to the next, which would mean that our labor market is growing. But ever since June of 2008, that has not been the case for the entire metropolitan statistical area. Trade, transportation, utilities, which I said was 21%, added 1,200 jobs in 2008. The sector is contracting in 2009. This is the only one that's looking normal from previous years that you would like to see both education and health services growing from one year to the next. And this also reflects also what's happening nationally, that this is the only sector that's really providing employment growth during this national downturn. Financial activities, which is 13% of our total, had a net gain between 2007 to 2008 of 2,400 jobs. Through July of 2008, August 2008 through January 2009. This was kind of curious to me that it has identical sector employment, and it has been on a decline by a few hundred jobs so far in 2009. Now, financial activities is mortgage, which I would expect that may be increasing, but what is concern to me is the local credit card industry. This one is retail trade. Normally have a peak around Christmas time, and you can see what's happening in 2009. 2007 and 2008 almost mirror each other as far as level of employment month to month. This one reflects what's going on nationally as well, that manufacturing is in contraction. Leisure and hospitality, it's going to be like construction, as you'll see in a minute. It's a seasonal, which has a summer peak. So far, there hasn't been any increase in employment in 2009. Professional and business services, this one kind of surprised me. And for some of these, I haven't been able to find what the definitions of some of these categories are. You can see that this sector, even though it's only 8% of total employment, that it's in 2009 is starting to rebound. Construction. If you expect the stimulus package is going to bring Sioux Falls back to life, I think you're gravely mistaken, because it's only 5% of the local employment market. The other sectors are like construction, they're 5% or less. And since 90% of the local economy supports this government employment, you can see that government employment is up slightly. Well, it is not all. Sioux Falls has done quite well. Of the 383 standard metropolitan statistical areas in the nation, we are number 12 as far as the best unemployment rates in the nation. This is from economy.com. These gives you an example as of through March of 2009, which states, the ones that are in blue, have greater than 9% unemployment, and it's the Great Plains states and everything all the way down to Texas, the middle of the country, that is doing better than everybody else. So what does the future hold for this local labor market? Well, I've got a couple of views. They're not mine. Ernie Goss, that's a regional economist at Creighton University, forecasts an additional 12,000 jobs lost in South Dakota by October of this year. This would bring state employment rate to near 7%. So far, this is just conjecture on my part, but 25% of the statewide job losses that have occurred since August of 2008 have been in Sioux Falls. So does that mean that we're going to have another net loss of 3,000 jobs in this local labor market, even though some are, as what I've shown you, some of these sectors are seasonal, some of them are growing, and some of them are contracting. Ralph Brown, the retired USD professor, said in the Argus Leader in the middle of April that he thought the state's unemployment rate would exceed the record that South Dakota set in the 1982 recession, which was 5.8%. So those are two different views by two economists, but the most positive view is by Pam Roberts, the South Dakota Department of Labor Secretary. She thinks that labor market expansion, which means there is many more job losses in South Dakota, is going to occur by May of 2009. Both of these comments by Pam Roberts and Ernie Goss were on a news broadcast of WNX radio. In addition to whether or not the economy turns around with jobs, nationally the number of hours worked per week is at a record low. Number of hours worked is a leading economic indicator. Employers increase current worker hours before hiring new ones, so there's slack out there. Employers sometimes hire temps before hiring new employees also, but currently the temporary job market is also contracting nationally. And the lead economist of economy.com, this Mark Zandi, made this comment in one of his articles in earlier this month. On the 20th of April, Michael Bender of Bender Commercial Real Estate said that there were 190 empty retail spaces in Sioux Falls, which is 5.8% of the market. He thinks the vacancy rate by the end of 2009 is going to be closer to 9%. And another commercial real estate firm, NAI, Mike Hauk, says the current office vacancy rate in Sioux Falls is nearly 10%, which is a historical high. I'm now moving to not the 2% municipal tax, but the 4% sales tax as it concerns the City of Sioux Falls. This is all data that's readily available on the internet from the Department of Revenue and Regulation website. 61% of this local economy is retail sales. This is data that I aggregated for the first quarter of 2009. As far as taxable sales are concerned, both agriculture and construction are very, very, very small. The dark blue shaded number 7 is financial insurance and real estate, which currently is about 3% of the local 4% sales tax. The second largest sector is 18%, which is a services sector. And without putting any numbers up on the board, I will just say that 4% sales tax for the City of Sioux Falls, which includes both Lincoln and Minnehaha County portions, we are negative for 5 months in a row. 2 or 3 of those months are very small percentage that you're almost treading water from, and this is a comparison from the current month to the equivalent month of the previous year. The biggest decline is the current month. Sioux Falls is down 7%. March 2009 to March 2008. And the thing that's most curious and interesting to me is I've taken Gene's numbers of the 1% municipal sales tax, graphed them for 2008, 2009, and done that with a 4% sales tax for the City of Sioux Falls. And the numbers just don't look. You would think that if something goes up in one for the 4%, they would also go up in the municipal, but it doesn't look that way at all. And it's just a curiosity to me because I don't understand questions that city council people have, and why this data does not agree. But there are two new statistical series that are being done which may help the city council and future city councils in the future. There's a municipal sales tax by standard industrial classification code that gets it down into 4 digits, and also a municipal tax due per city comparison. It's a new report. Both these reports started in January of 2009. And I hope in the future that the confusion that I have about comparing municipal sales tax data to 4% state sales tax data becomes clearer in my mind in the future. And that's basically what I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weber. Questions? Councilor Knudsen?
Mark, or Mr. Weber, I don't have any questions, but I do appreciate your presentation today, and I particularly appreciate the fact that you attend so many meetings and have such a sincere interest in our city, and I actually wish that more citizens were like you. So anyway, thank you for following us as closely as you do.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Mark, can you just clarify? You mentioned the 4% sales tax that the state collects here in Sioux Falls. Did you say it was down 7% from March of 2009?
Yeah.
So-
March 2009, March 2008. It's
2008, yes.
It's the same information. I mean, both the labor market stuff as far as the total and the sales tax data is absolutely the same information that's on the vital signs page of the Sioux Falls Business Journal. But for the month of March, unless my mathematics is wrong, it's down 7%.
So we're receiving, the state at least is receiving 7% less money
Yes.
in March of 2009 in comparison to March of 2008.
Yes.
Now, is that exclusively within the city limits of Sioux Falls, or does that?
I think they aggregate stuff by zip code. You have to read all you have to read all the footnotes that are on the tables. But it includes the portion of Sioux Falls that's both in Lincoln and Minnehaha County.
Yes.
Because now that the state has discontinued this top 10 cities as of January of 2009 and instituted these two new tables, now it's a little bit more work for me to aggregate what Sioux Falls is, because Sioux Falls is separated out and it used to be all together.
Okay.
And that's also why this 4-digit standard industrial classification, that I could look at the 4% sales tax and make a comparison to, say, for example, florists or something, or building materials and paint. I mean, the construction sector is also down this year versus last year, and you can get quite specific on tracking which, like, furniture stores, durable goods industries are well, I don't want to say this, but they may be the first ones, that you're speculating here, whether they're going to survive the economic downturn, or whether people like Mr. Bender and whatever are thinking that there's going to be a lot more, vacant retail space out there by the end of the year.
Mr. Costello?
Mark, I'm just wondering, did you test your correlation theories like in a total, like say the total for 2008? Because as you probably know, the city records or shows its sales tax receipts based on a cash method, and I'm not sure what the statistics that you're looking at, and we're on a cash method month to month, and we adjust to accrual at the end of the year. And Director Rosenhorst, if I'm wrong, if you correct me, please. And so it would depend on what the state is reporting, whether or not they're reporting on a cash or accrual method.
Well, this is kind of, this last graph is kind of mixing apples and oranges too, because your recording period is not at the what the state receives and what you report, what Mr. Roundhurst reports to the city council is not on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah, I think we are on a month-to-month from a standpoint that whatever checks come during that month are posted to that month, and then at the end of the year, we adjust it to an accrual method. And I would ask Councilor Brown and Director Rowenhorst, but I mean that's been a significant frustration with the city, with the state, in trying to determine the sales tax receipts that we receive, what time frame that they relate to. And I believe it's initiative that the Municipal League has been working on because we're not the only ones, I don't think, in the
No.
boat here. I mean, there's many municipalities out there in the state that are, I think, been frustrated with the ability to try to figure out how the sales tax receipts and what time periods they actually relate to. But I would think on a total, if you looked at it over a lapse of time, a larger lapse of time, it should give you a pretty accurate sense of the picture, wouldn't it?
Well, I haven't done it on an annual basis, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. Well, that might account for some of the disparity between what the state reports.
Well,
and what
I
the
just
city-
I just don't think there would be these, I mean, these red lines of huge peaks that represent the, I mean, the red and the red in the darker blue, that I would think that they'd move in the same direction, and you wouldn't have such large peaks and troughs as what is represented in the city data versus what the 4% state data is when they're from the same jurisdiction.
I did have one other question. During your unemployment numbers, you talked about the different sectors. What were the top 3 or 4 sectors for employment for Sioux Falls?
Top 3 sectors are trade, transportation, utilities. It's 21% of the three-county market. Education, health services is 19%, and financial activities is 13%, followed closely by retail trade, 12%, manufacturing is 10%, and then everything else is less than 10%.
In the construction is actually 5%?
5%.
Wow. That's interesting.
But that includes both natural resources and agriculture, but we don't have any, I'm not aware of any other than, granite quarries. I'm not aware of any mining around here.
Anything else, Mr. Weber? Very good. Well, thank you for coming down here today, and thank you for your information, Mr. Weber. Is there anything else for the greater good? Mr. Jameson?
If I could encourage the rest of the council to come to the Land Use Committee meeting following this immediately. I think there are some important topics for everybody to listen and hear what they have to say. Plus, Mark Cotter has a great, exciting presentation he wants to share. So if you get time, make it. I think it'll help you.
Are you going to feed us, Mr. Jameson?
If I can, I will.
Very good. Councilor Knudsen?
I was wondering if we have some time and, I don't know, like maybe I'm thinking of something like around May 11th when we don't have a full agenda on the quality of life bonds. But I was just wondering if sometime in the near future we could ask the city clerk to just give us just an update on how the city archivist project is going, since the city clerk is our city archivist. And I have not even taken time myself to tour the Gray Bar, which I keep saying I'm going to do, and I haven't quite done it. But I just think that once, I think actually a couple times a year, at least, we should ask for a report from the city clerk on how is that citywide project coming.
Very good. We'll request that of Deborah and see where that takes us. Thank you, Councilor. Anything else? Very good. Like I said before, Gerald is not here, so we're going to forego the executive session one more time. And so we're going to adjourn this meeting now. And like Greg said, don't forget that there's a committee meeting after this. So we stand adjourned. Thank you.